Welcome in, everybody. I'm Reed Cowan. Breaking news out of the state of Georgia. You see him right there behind me. The man accused of killing 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley found guilty on all charges. A judge wasted no time deciding Jose Ibara's fate after Ibara waived a jury trial.
Laken Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself.
You use the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented.
So yesterday down in Athens, Georgia, the judge took 20 minutes to find that guy right there, Jose Ibara, guilty, and then to sentence him. This all happened so quickly. He murdered Laken Riley back in February. And then this case is already tried. He's already sentenced. It happened very quickly. Yesterday was very emotional. Laken's stepfather, her father, her mother, her sister, I believe that's her sister in the striped sweatshirt or sweater, her best friends, they all spoke. And they were talking about how chilling it is to be in the same room with the guy who took their sister, their loved one's life.
Now, as heartbreaking as this was for all of America, it was the justice that Laken Riley deserved, or at least almost justice. But because of the policies that the current administration has put forth, she's now gone. You heard the president basically saying sorry for calling this murderer an illegal immigrant, right? He killed a freaking American citizen, guys. And all they cared about is how he was labeled. That we should dub him an undocumented person? Well, he'll be called a murderer and a criminal and a felon for the rest of his life from now on. And as deplorable as that might seem, ABC News may have just topped this with the report of this senseless killing. So ABC News journalist Ike Ejaki, he went on air to blame President-elect Donald Trump as the reason as to why this undocumented murderer will spend the rest of his life in prison. You can't make this stuff up, guys. And before we even get into this, what is it with these far-left journalists and mainstream media and their hate for U.S. citizens? It's incredibly disrespectful to the family of Laken Riley to even talk about a border bill at this point, right? Now, I'm incredibly frustrated that we even have to give this guy any kind of airtime, but I feel like this is how unhinged the left has become. That if anything goes wrong, no matter how far-fetched it might be, they would make a way to blame President Trump. But let's hear the verdict of Ibara as it happened. Watch.
Count 1, malice murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 2, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 3, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 4, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 5, kidnapping with bodily injury. I find the defendant guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault with intent to rape. I find the defendant guilty. Count 7, aggravated battery, I find the defendant guilty. Count 8, obstructing or hindering a 911 call, I find the defendant guilty. Count 9, tampering with evidence, I find the defendant guilty. Count 10, peeping Tom, I find the defendant guilty.
Now, I understand that a sentence of life in prison without parole is brutal. However, we're all free to speak our minds when it comes to these kind of things. Now, a lot of people were saying, hey, this guy should have gotten the chair. What do you guys think about that? Life or the chair? Which would have been more appropriate for him? There are people who believe that we as American citizens should not be forced to have to pay for this guy's life sentence. Because if you think about it, he's now going to live off of our U.S. taxpayer dollars. Now, I agree that this may be deserving of, I don't know, something a little bit more efficient, shall we? If you know what I mean. But still, we hear these so-called journalists playing political games. It's insane to think that this guy was actually serious when he said this, but I'm gonna let you guys judge for yourselves. Watch.
It's essentially been a massive political lightning rod here in this country. And you said it there yourself, the president-elect campaigning on the death of Laken Riley and pointing to the current administration, saying that their laws and what they're calling failed policies contributed to Laken Riley's death. I want to remind you that Ibara entered this country illegally in 2022, according to law enforcement officials, and he was paroled and released for further processing by ICE. And since that time he entered the country, he was arrested another time. Law enforcement officers saying that he was arrested in 2023 in New York City and charged with acting in a manner to injure a child less than 17, as well as a motor vehicle violation. But it's important to note that although there is very little evidence indicating a connection between immigration and violent crime, this is still something the President-elect Trump, several Republicans on the Hill wanted to essentially plant their flag on and point that to the current Biden administration. And we saw that even as early as President Biden's latest State of the Union address, where Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene infamously interrupted President Biden, forcing him to acknowledge the death of Laken Riley, something that President Biden did by holding up a pin in her during that State of the Union. But it is important to note that all of this vitriol that we're hearing from Republicans and President-elect Trump regarding the policies of the Biden administration, it's important to know that President-elect Trump did force Republicans to essentially tank a bipartisan border security bill that both sides of the aisle said would have essentially addressed border security and immigration issues, Kira.
Hold up. Did he just say that there's no evidence linking illegal immigration and crime? It's like he's not hearing what he's actually saying. You're talking about an illegal immigrant who entered our country by breaking the law. He committed multiple crimes and he even took a life. This guy was a repeat offender, but somehow he wasn't deported. But you're saying that there's no connection or evidence to the two being linked together? And he has the nerve to try and pin this on President-elect Trump when his policies were removed by Biden on day one? Really? I'm not sure where he gets these ideas, but he needs to wake up to the reality. Whatever backlash he's facing, it's totally deserved. ABC News on its end is defending their story. They're saying that it's important to examine all factors contributing to the tragedy, which hasn't flown very well for many, as Laken Riley's death is being used as a political ploy for the left. If anybody is accountable, it's the people who put up lax policies and admitted to letting millions of illegal immigrants into our country, not the guy who put up the wall. And just to be absolutely clear, that border bill, it still would have allowed millions upon millions of illegal immigrants into the country. There wasn't going to be any changes besides the money that was slated to be sent to Ukraine. That's it. So what do you guys have to say about this journalist and his take on this?
The non-detained docket. So people's eyes might be glazing over right now with all the numbers we just threw at you. Just to put it in a nutshell right here, what we've learned from the acting ICE director via this letter to Congressman Tony Gonzalez is right now there are over 13,000 illegal aliens convicted of homicide who are roaming the United States right now. There are another 15,811 illegal aliens roaming the country right now who have been convicted of sexual assault, and there are even more who are facing charges for homicide and charges for sexual assault. So this just goes to show, guys, the non-detained docket has exploded under the Biden administration.
Well, there you go, guys. Jaw-dropping numbers reported by the director of ICE. Seriously, guys, the people that allowed this to happen should also be held accountable by the law, don't you think? Yeah, more on that later, guys. In other breaking news, President-elect Trump just nominated WWE's Linda McMahon as Secretary of Education. Here's a clip.
By the transition, Trump saying, "It is my great honor to announce that Linda McMahon, former administrator of the Small Business Administration, will be the United States Secretary of Education." He says for the past 4 years as the chair of the board at the America First Policy Institute, Linda has been a fierce advocate for parents' rights, working hard at both AFPI and America First Works to achieve universal school choice in 12 states, giving children the opportunity to receive an excellent education, regardless of zip code or outcome or income. As Secretary of Education, Linda will fight tirelessly to expand choice to every state in America and empower parents to make the best education decisions for their families here. So you see there McMahon and Trump there at Mar-a-Lago. So yes, McMahon served in the first Trump administration as the Small Business Administration head. She has now been tapped to lead the education department. Now, this is somewhat interesting because some in Trump's orbit, including Trump himself, have flirted with the idea of doing away with the Department of Education outright. And so we'll have to wait and see whether or not the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency cuts at the corners of the federal bureaucracy, and will they start there at the Department of Education? That remains to be seen. And so, remember, McMahon serves right now as the co-chair of Trump's transition, along with Howard Lutnick, the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. Now, Lutnick was tapped today as well as the next Secretary of Commerce, and it was reported that that was a position McMahon was vying and jockeying for. And it's been reported that McMahon now gets this after losing out on commerce there. So, remember, at the Education Department, key issues including school choice, including student loan debt forgiveness, including trans issues inside schools across the country. Those issues are going to be front and center to whoever leads the Department of Education, whether or not they can be confirmed by the Senate here. Linda McMahon is Trump's choice to do just that.
Maybe he nominated McMahon to help shut down the Department of Education like his campaign promised. That would certainly be something to see, wouldn't it? We'll definitely get into more of that later in today's video. But first, take a look at this, guys. This is the face of a man, Brandon Somoza, an illegal immigrant from Venezuela with suspected ties to the Tren de Aragua gang, and has been arrested outside a New York City migrant shelter after allegedly breaking into a Manhattan prosecutor's apartment, pleasuring himself, and then robbing her. Let me repeat this for you guys. This illegal immigrant followed this liberal lawyer into her apartment building near the intersection of the 44th Street and 9th Avenue around 2 a.m. on Sunday. Once inside, he demanded cash and stole credit cards and a cell phone from her purse. Then he allegedly performed a lewd act in front of the female and then ran away. The lewd act was him allegedly pleasuring himself in the hallway before he took off, only to be arrested outside the Row. And in case you guys didn't know, the Row was a former Lux hotel that the city officials turned into a migrant shelter to help house tens of thousands of illegals who flooded into the Big Apple under the Biden-Harris administration. You see the problem here? And apparently the Row and other New York City shelters have been identified as Tren de Aragua hotspots, and the police previously blamed the gang for a rise in robberies targeting women with purses or cell phones. The New York authorities themselves described it as a wave of migrant crime. And remember how I mentioned how the woman was a Manhattan prosecutor? Well, that means that she also works for DA Alvin Bragg, the same controversial far-left Democrat whose office prosecuted President-elect Donald Trump and is currently trying to convict a Marine veteran who intervened during a schizophrenic man's violent subway outburst of manslaughter. Yeah. Only in America, guys. Meanwhile, Republicans like Georgia Governor Brian Kemp are making sure that Americans see justice from these migrant crimes. So Brian Kemp recently commented on the life sentence without parole served by Jose Ibara after being convicted for murdering Laken Riley. He said that he was glad that justice was served and that it was swift and severe. Kemp also took aim at President Biden's border security actions and said that the current administration's policies are outrageous, that they've gotten people killed not only in Georgia but around the country. And that's why our people elected Donald Trump to be our president, or at least the big reason for that. That's why he says that they look forward to working with the administration like they did in their first term to secure the border and make sure that these things aren't happening in our local communities. But what do you guys think? Is life without parole too good for Jose Ibarra? Drop a quick yes or no in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on that, guys. And while you guys are at it, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well and give the video a thumbs up to show your support. As always, I definitely aim to give you guys the latest updates and analysis here on the channel, so your engagement definitely helps out a ton. Now, President-elect Trump also paid the tribute himself to Laken Riley and her family after the guilty conviction. On Truth Social, he called for the justice of Laken Riley and reported that the illegal who killed our beloved Laken Riley was just found guilty on all counts for his horrific crimes. He said that although the pain and heartbreak will last forever, hopefully this can help bring some peace and closure to her wonderful family who fought for justice and to ensure that other families don't have to go through what she has. He also added that it's time to secure our border and remove these criminals and thugs from our country so that nothing like this can happen again. Hard agree on that one, guys. Our president-elect definitely means business. Other Republicans, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, slammed this decision and called for Ibara, who entered the country illegally, to be given given the death penalty. Georgia State Senator Colton Moore demanded the Attorney General Chris Carr file an emergency motion to demand the death penalty. He also slammed the Democratic prosecutor in charge of the case, Deborah Gonzalez. According to Moore, Gonzalez let her radical political agenda stand in the way of justice. He said by refusing to seek the death penalty, she denied Laken's family, friends, and community the full measure of justice they deserve. I don't know if this is connected, you guys, but I watched the sentencing, and the judge read the verdict aloud. Riley's family members and friends could be heard sobbing while Ibara just sat stone-faced. No emotion out of the guy. Maybe the family wanted something a little bit more than life without parole for the murder of their beloved Laken Riley. I mean, who could forget Trump's words at the Republican convention? Yet another American life was stolen by a criminal alien set free by this administration. He said that his vow to America is to not let these killers and criminals into our country. Seriously, guys, January 20th cannot come fast enough. I can't wait for President-elect Trump to be inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States and finally clean up his country. A recent addition to Trump's roster, Linda McMahon, the president-elect's pick for education secretary. Now, many of you guys may know her from the WWE. She was the chief executive of the wrestling franchise. Then she stepped down to enter politics. She ran twice for U.S. Senate seats in Connecticut, but lost in 2010 to Richard Blumenthal and in 2012 to Chris Murphy. From there, she shifted gears and focused on providing financial support to candidates. Most notably, McMahon provided $6 million to help Trump's candidacy after he secured the Republican presidential nomination in 2016. But for McMahon, teaching was really an initial career goal. McMahon served on the Connecticut Board of Education for a year back in 2009. She also spent years on the Board of Trustees for Sacred Heart University in Connecticut. And from there, what I gathered, she's expressed support for charter schools and school choice. Two things that I see President-elect Trump supporting as well. Apart from that, she's shown that she has what it takes to support the administration. In 2016, Trump chose McMahon as a leader of the Small Business Administration. The agency gives loans and disaster relief to companies and entrepreneurs, and it monitors the government officials' compliance with contract laws. When McMahon was chosen, she was even praised by Blumenthal and Murphy, the two Connecticut Democrats who defeated her in Senate campaigns. Blumenthal called her a person of serious accomplishment and ability, while Murphy said that she was a talented and experienced business person. Trump said when she left the administration, this just in, guys, illegal immigrant Jose Ibara was just found guilty for the murder of Georgia nursing student Laken Riley. Here's the clip, guys.
We have breaking news. A judge has reached a verdict in the trial surrounding the murder of 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley. That suspect, Jose Ibara. Let's listen.
Count 2, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 3, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 4, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 5, kidnapping with bodily injury. I find the defendant guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault with intent to rape. I find the defendant guilty. Count 7, aggravated battery. I find the defendant guilty. Count 8, obstructing or hindering a 911 call. I find the defendant guilty. Count 9, tampering with evidence. I find the defendant guilty. Count 10, peeping Tom. I find the defendant guilty. I certainly will allow both sides to look at this if you want to do it. The next step is sentencing. I'm prepared to go forward with that now, or if either side suggests that you need a few minutes, an hour break or something to do that, then I'll certainly do that as well. Consider that.
We have one moment.
Sure. I understand.
We'll come back for sentencing.
I understand. We will recess till 12:30. Recess till 12:30. Will that work?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
We've just watched a judge in Athens, Georgia, convict Jose Ibara on all 10 counts in the murder of Georgia nursing student Laken Riley.
You know what? I've talked to people who've been in prison, and they say that Jose Ibara being sentenced life without parole isn't really justice being served. He gets 3 meals a day, he'll get to exercise on the yard, he'll get to buy snacks off the snack line, he'll get to fill out a store order to buy things like cigs, coffee, etc. And he also gets a place to sleep at night. He'll also get medical help when needed, and he also gets to wake up every morning, all at the American taxpayer's expense. Now seriously guys, a lot of critics are saying that the death penalty would have been justice served for the illegal immigrant criminal. But do you guys think Democrats care? No. In fact, they even want to protect illegal immigrants from Trump's mass deportation plan. Watch this.
We begin with Ibara's roommate testifying that Jose Ibara was given a free ride to a fancy New York hotel in Georgia on a Biden administration-sponsored flight. He was at the Roosevelt Hotel, then takes a flight from New York to Georgia, where he allegedly kills Laken Riley.
And how did you get to Athens?
¿Y cómo llegaron a Athens?
En Nueva York pedimos en Manhattan.
In New York, we asked in Manhattan.
En el Hotel Roosevelt.
And Hotel Roosevelt.
De Manhattan pedimos un vuelo humanitario aquí hasta Atlanta.
In Manhattan, we requested for a humanitarian flight to come here to Atlanta.
A humanitarian flight. Isn't that nice? Well, once in Georgia, prosecutors say he, quote, went hunting for females and allegedly murdered Laken Riley. Now, stories like hers are the driving force behind President-elect Trump's mass deportation plan, but Democrats are vowing to resist it, to fight it, and are apparently more concerned about protecting illegal immigrants than your daughters, your sons, your families.
We will not be participating in misguided efforts that harm our communities, and I've been incredibly clear about that.
If the Trump administration requests it, would the Massachusetts State Police assist in mass deportations?
No, absolutely not.
The president-elect, former President Trump, his threat is not just towards new arrivals and undocumented families. We're going to stand up, we're going to protect undocumented individuals.
When people talk, especially elected officials, about the issue of undocumented Americans, one thing that we can say is that we agree. Being undocumented is a problem. But our solution, instead of turning the military on our own people, is to document them. To document the undocumented.
What we can do is make sure that we are doing our part to protect our residents in every possible way, that we are not cooperating with those efforts that actually threaten the safety of everyone by causing widespread fear and having large-scale economic impact.
So the mayor of Boston, that was Miss Wu, wants to protect residents. Oh, wait, well, residents, citizens like Laken Riley were not protected down in Georgia.
They want to protect illegal immigrants while Americans are left unprotected. You see the problem here? Honestly, them openly defying the mandate of the president-elect, isn't that treason already? Or to use their favorite term, election denial? And do you know what else I found, guys? Apparently, over 13,000 illegal immigrants convicted of murder have been released into the United States. For real. Here's the news from ICE. Watch.
It's a jaw-dropper, to say the least. So to set the stage here, let me just explain what these numbers mean. ICE has something called a non-detained docket. Essentially what that is it means migrants who were encountered by DHS but are no longer in federal custody. So who's on this non-detained docket? It's illegal immigrants who were caught and released at the border, released with the court date years away. They're in immigration proceedings, combined with illegal immigrants who have already been ordered deported from the country by a judge but are still here roaming the country. So keep that in mind, this non-detained docket. According to a letter that the acting director of ICE just sent to Texas Congressman Tony Gonzalez, on ICE's non-detained docket, they're currently tracking 425,000 non-citizens who have been convicted of a crime. Of that number, over 13,000 non-citizens have convictions for homicide and are on the non-detained docket, meaning they're roaming the country right now. On top of that, there are another 15,811 non-citizens convicted of sexual assault who are roaming the country right now on ICE's non-detained docket. It doesn't stop there. Those are convictions. The ICE director also says there are currently just under 1,900 non-citizens on the non-detained docket who have pending homicide charges who are roaming the country, and another 4,250 non-citizens who have pending sexual assault charges who are roaming the country on.
Now, on that note, I want to talk to you guys about how great The View is at fact checking. Now, I covered this in a previous live stream video that I highly urge you guys to watch because I was being totally sarcastic about their skills. You're not going to believe what Joy Behar said on air, so definitely watch that one after this one. But as always, appreciate you guys being here. Thanks for hitting the like button and subscribing. Check out this video here or our playlist down here next, and I'll see you guys on the next one.